like to give you some tips with this particular display, and this will work actually on our old display as well. If you want to see a particular tire reading, you do not have to wait for this display to rotate through those tires on your screen. You can actually manually take and use your plus and minus button, and you can actually switch to different sensors by just hitting the plus button, and it'll stay on that sensor for about 10 seconds as opposed to 5 seconds when it's doing this automatically. You can go use the plus, or you can go with the minus and go back so you can look at a particular sensor. The other thing you can watch here is for the battery indicator. Now, the battery indicator on this particular display actually is telling you the battery, the strength in this display, not on your sensor itself. That indicator that's on this side is showing you the battery for this display. And when it gets down to 1 bar, you really need to plug it in and recharge it. It'll go about 5 to 7 days on a charge, as long as it's got a full charge to begin with, which takes about 4 hours to do. Okay. Now, it does have an indicator on here for your sensor battery as well. The only thing about that is if you have the monitor shut off and the sensor is actually failing or dying because the battery is low, then you may miss that symbol because it's only available for about 2 to 3 days, because the battery at the very end of its life in the sensor will throw out a signal that says change the battery, and that's another indicator that's on this side at the top of the screen. So you may or may not see that. If your sensor does not read properly, or if it's completely blank, you might want to just take it apart, change the battery, especially if it's been in service for a year to a year and a half. Change the battery out, and that should bring that sensor back, and you'll get all your readings again. Another note, when you change the battery in the sensor, you do not have to reprogram it into the monitor, okay? The battery is a separate entity. All it does is it uses the sensor as a transmitter, and the transmitter in the sensor does not affect the programming in the display. So make sure that once you change out the battery in the sensor itself, don't reprogram it. It should be fine. If it does not read after you do that, you may want to try to reprogram it, but that is something that you don't normally have to do. Another tip for you with this particular system is if you are getting readings from your sensor, a particular sensor on one of your tires that is intermittent. Say you start out your trip, everything is working fine, and then you get about an hour into it and the sensor will drop out. That may be your valve core in your valve stem of that particular tire. What happens is with those valve cores, a lot of them will shrink when they get hot. So if it's barely making contact with our sensor and giving you just a little bit of air pressure, it may be possible to increase that air pressure by taking a valve core tool and unscrewing your valve core until it just starts leaking in that particular tire, and then screw it back in just a little bit so that it will stop leaking, but yet that brings that valve core out in the valve stem. And when you put on your sensor, it'll actually push that little plunger that's in that valve core farther down, getting more air pressure in your sensor, and that usually will alleviate that problem. So you could try that and see if that will fix the problem if you're not getting any reading from that sensor or you're getting intermittent readings. Another thing that you might want to consider is if you have a unit that you're towing or your motorhome is over 34 foot in length, you may want to put in a repeater. And you'll need to have a 507 repeater if you have this system, because we have a 510 repeater and a 507. This, of course, is the 507 system. You may want to put a repeater in, and that may eliminate some problems with dropout as well. And that will sometimes affect the front tires of a coach as well as your back tires and your vehicle that you're towing, not just the farthest tire away. So something you want to keep in mind and maybe need to put in if you don't have a repeater, and the repeater actually is hardwired into a 12-volt system. So those are some tips for you that you might want to consider if you're having some dropout problems. The final tip I will give you, if you're having dropouts in your tires and they're not displaying on your display correctly, or if they're intermittent, you may want to check and see if you have an indoor-outdoor thermometer. If you do, some of those thermometers are actually on the same frequency that our sensors are on, which is 433 megahertz. If it is 433 megahertz, then that indoor-outdoor thermometer could be interfering with your signal strength from our sensors forward to the display. So you may want to take the batteries out of both the unit itself that's on your wall, the receiver, and the transmitter that's transmitting those temperatures, whether it's in your refrigerator or outdoors to give you outdoor temperature. Take the batteries out, see if that will solve your problem with the dropout. That's something that happens quite often. The other thing you can do to eliminate it permanently, if that is the problem, you can get rid of that particular system that you have on 433 megahertz. I actually sold mine, put it out on the picnic table of one of the RV parks we're in, and somebody bought that because they didn't have our sensor system in at the time. And you can get a 915 megahertz system, which looks identical, performs very well, and that will eliminate that problem permanently for you if you want an indoor-outdoor thermometer. So I wanted you to see what it looks like when you have all your sensors programmed into the display and it's reading properly. As you see, it cycles through, which it should do, from one tire to the next in that particular pattern where it starts on the right front, to the left front, to the right rear outer dual, then inner dual, then to the left inner dual, and outer dual on the left-hand side. So that's what it looks like when it's programmed properly and it's working properly, and you can now see what it looks like as far as your tire temperature and your tire pressure goes for each individual tire. So the tire that's blinking is the one that's showing you the temperature and pressure. Then it will move on to the next one. And as I said before, if you want to go to a specific tire, you can push the plus or minus and manually go to that tire. If you would like more information on our TST widescreen display, either the monochrome or the color display, you can give us a call at 770-889-9102, and we'd be happy to help you either purchase one of these units or with some technical support. You can also go to our website at www.tsttruck.com. That's TSTTRUCK.com. Thanks for watching.